Hey everybody, how you doing? Well, that's good. Welcome to PHLY Flyers, presented by Mortgage CS. Check out mortgagecs.com/PHLY to start your home buying process today. Company NMLS ID number 1464766. My name is Bill Matz. I'm your director of fun and games for the afternoon. Joining me as always is that foul-mouthed beat reporter, Charlie O'Connor. We're gonna get into some of that stuff a little bit later. But how was it live, Chuck? Was that press conference with Jonesy and Hilferty just one of the great experiences of your career?
I would say it was a moderately interesting press conference. I've certainly been to pressers that have had a little bit more newsworthy tidbits come out of them, but I don't think it was a bad press conference.
No, definitely not. I think there was some good subtle information in there. Like the things they said lead me to connect dots elsewhere. And we're going to get into all that today. It's a reaction to Jonesy and Hilferty. The president and CEO met with the media today. They didn't have any media availability at exit interviews a few weeks ago. That was like over a month ago at this point, I guess.
Yeah.
And
it was over a month ago.
So today they decided we're going to go out there. In the very beginning, they said, hey, we want to do this every year. Like we're going to have, after the dust is settled, we're going to have kind of our breakdown day. And that's what today was for Jonesy and Hilferty. The biggest shock for me that came out of this thing, Charlie, it took a long time for Matvei Michkov's name to come up. Did it not?
It did. It did. And
there's other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I think my thing was that I really didn't feel like asking the question because I knew someone was going to, and I knew they weren't going to give us any information on him anyway. So it was sort of like, all right, I'll let someone else burn that question because I actually want to get into more of the bigger picture of how they see, the state of the organization after year one of this, as they love to call it, the new era of Orange. So that was more my focus. But yeah, look, if this would have been a press conference that they would have been secretly hiding the fact that Matvei Michkov was actually in the other room, they would have brought him out immediately. And once it became clear they were not doing that, it was like, okay, this is just your normal boilerplate end of season presser.
Well, that's when I texted you this morning, like half hour before the presser started. I was like, what's going on over there? You see any like skinny blonde dudes, maybe who don't have a great grasp on the language? And you're like, the entire downstairs is under construction at the training center. It's like, oh, maybe this is a Wayne's World 2 YMCA situation, and he's going to be dressed up like a contractor, and then suddenly it's Michkov. And I just wish Kelly was here to laugh at that joke with me because she gets all my 90s references. But I want to start with Michkov because that is the most pressing thing, and it's what they didn't say. And that's what's interesting, because what they do, you didn't ask the question because you knew what was coming, but I wanted to hear it.
Yeah.
And it was
going to be
much more of the same. The quote I took from Jonesy on Michkov, we don't know. And the quote I took from Hilferty, at some point it will be a great thing for the Philadelphia Flyers. And then he turned to Jonesy. That's good, right?
Yeah. And it was basically like, I didn't say anything wrong, right? I didn't mess up.
The only thing that had to come out of this press conference was I didn't say oh, he's coming. And he didn't. And it seemed like Jonesy was like, way to go, kid. And that's really where we are with Matvei Michkov. We want him, but we're not going to act like we're trying to steal him.
Yeah.
We're going to play nice. It's a continuation of the playing nice that we heard from Danny Briere.
The furthest that either of them were willing to go, which was a good quote, and I'll almost certainly include it in my article, was we will welcome him with open arms. That was about as forward as Jonesy was willing to get, because he then obviously qualified it with, look, we've been planning for us not to have him for the entirety of the contract. We respect everything that's going on. We know about as much as you guys do, which is certainly a lie. I'm sure they know a lot more than we do, but of course, they have to say that.
They're not supposed to.
Yeah, but I'm sure they have some boots on the ground and they're getting information about where this is going.
Yeah.
I don't think they are directly involved, but it would shock me if they don't have more information than we do.
Matvei Michkov has an agent.
Yes.
You would assume his agent has a phone and knows the number of the team that drafted him in the NHL. That's you would guess. But
you would guess they're getting semi-regular updates on progress. And I reported this in my article yesterday that when I talk to people in the Flyers organization, they don't seem like this is not a possibility anymore. It's still possible. Now, we'll see how it plays out probably over the next 3 weeks or so, because based on that initial report that kicked things off, I guess this was way back in early May, late April.
May,
when the Scott people basically said that we want a resolution, a decision to be made by the end of June. That does set a timeline. So I do think we will know one way or the other probably by the end of this month as to whether Michkov will be coming over this year or whether they're going to have to wait at least one more year before that all gets worked out. But yeah, what we got from Jonesy and Hilferty was about what you would expect. It's clear that they are not ruling out the possibility that they could get him over here as soon as this season. It's also clear that they do not want to ruffle any feathers.
Nope, absolutely not. And they are playing this right. Like, that's all I can say right now. We'll get into some of the stuff that they said that I'm like, well, then how can you justify? But we'll get into that later. This thing, I think they are handling very well with the Matvei Michkov situation. And I did appreciate Dan Hilferty has a really great way of communicating with the media, fans, whatever, and getting across his personal fandom and being like, listen, I don't know shit. You know, I know, and he brought it up multiple times. You know, I worked in healthcare. You know, I understand that. I understand business, like in general, but he gets across, listen, yeah, like I want him. I badly want Matvei Michkov, but he even reiterated, we drafted him with the understanding he had a 3-year contract in the KHL.
Right.
And that's all we know. Now, again, they know more. They can't tell us that, and that's cool.
Yeah.
I think they're handling this properly.
Yeah, I absolutely think so. And speaking to Hilferty for a second, I do think that, because you mentioned that Hilferty very purposely makes the point that I'm a fan, I'm not the hockey guy. Like, I love hockey, I know hockey, but I'm not the expert. These guys are the experts. They're running the team. But I thought one thing he did very well in this press conference, Hilferty, was saying that he's not an expert, but then dropping enough things to show that he knows what he's talking about.
Yes.
Like I did, the two things that stood out to me in that regard. One was, and we'll get into the specifics of this conversation a little bit later, when we were talking about making progress. And he noted about, you know, to me, it's even more important for the progress of guys like Tyson Foerster. Like, look, would I expect an owner to know who Tyson Foerster is? Yeah, but also he's not Travis Konecny. He's not, he's not one of their superstars yet. And for him to bring up Tyson Foerster unprompted, it just shows a little bit of knowledge that like a Dave Scott probably didn't have. Then the second thing that jumped out at me, which I thought was like a legitimately very intelligent hockey point when I was bringing up about the idea of progress, he's like, look, there's teams like the Devils who we finished higher than that probably were worse than their true talent level this year. They might jump us next year, not because we got worse, but because they just play up to how good they are. Like, that's a legitimately intelligent observation about the NHL, and it shows that he's paying attention.
No, like they could have the exact same record next year and be 1 or 2 spots down in the standings because like the Devils figured it out, and then an Atlantic team figured it out, Ottawa, Buffalo, whoever. Yeah. But that's like something we've said on this show. Like, yeah, maybe they don't take a step forward next year standings-wise, but maybe visually it's better. And we know now that Dan Hilferty listens to the show. We'll get into that in a little bit.
But honestly, it just, I think for me, like, it just shows that really, like, he's good at like lowering expectations, but also
exceeding them.
Also exceeding them in the sense of like, oh yeah, he's knowledgeable. Like, no, he doesn't know hockey the way that Keith Jones and Danny Briere are doing. He acknowledges that, but he's not an idiot. Like, he knows the team, he follows the team closely, and he knows what's going on. And I think there was, especially by the end, there was a lot of doubt that Dave Scott had that same level of knowledge.
He just didn't have a level of interest.
Yeah.
Like, it ain't that hard.
I think he was interested in the team in theory.
Yes.
But I don't think he was as invested in the day-to-day minutia of the actual hockey team and the way that Hilferty certainly presents himself. And look, even if he's faking it, he's putting the effort in to do a good job of faking it.
I think like he is great for the way like Jonesy is great at this because he understands the market. Like Hilferty just has this little, when we interviewed him, it was just a couple of minutes at the Flyers Carnival. He came up, Now listen, Dan Hilferty knows who Charlie O'Connor is. Charlie O'Connor is the #1 hockey beat reporter in the city of Philadelphia. And I don't say that, you laugh, but I don't say that like as bullshit. But he comes up and he goes, Bill, Kelly, hey, how you doing? Like, he's very good at this thing.
Yeah.
He's very good at the role he's in right now. And the thing that stuck out to me, there's a lot. We're going to go through a lot of this press conference today. That's what the show's about. There is this thought of the previous regime, whether it's, Dave Scott or whatever nameless, faceless Comcast Corporation thing that owned the team that everyone just hated because it wasn't Ed Snyder.
Right.
Hilferty is traveling to road games. He went to like 60 games this year, and he's in the locker room after every game.
Yeah, I saw him a lot.
Yeah,
and like it honestly,
you saw some video of it, but it sounds like he was there a ton.
It speaks to how normal it was seeing him that I wasn't tweeting every time I saw him, because it was pretty regular that when I would go, because I didn't go on every road trip. But when I went on road trips, almost always Hilferty was there. And in the beginning, I would tweet it out. By the end of the season, it was just like, oh, yeah, there's Hilferty. Like, not surprising.
And it just made me, and listen, Dan Hilferty, beginning of the season when we did the tour of the Wells Fargo Center, he was like, I cannot replace Ed Snyder. No one can ever be Ed Snyder.
And he can't.
Nobody
can.
Yeah, it's like trying to be George Washington. Like there's one. He ain't here no more, but I think this kind of speaks to the environment, like this new era of orange. It's new. Like, they changed the color and everything, and there's a new approach. They're not actively going for it every year, which is a change of sorts. But it's kind of the get right back where we started from situation. And like, we need, what made us successful was that culture. And that culture started at the top. It wasn't just that we had the Broad Street Bullies. We were this mean team. Like, we had burned it. It wasn't Fred Shiro. It was started with Ed Snyder making the thing a family, where it wasn't a nameless, faceless corporation. You knew the owner's name. The owner came into the locker room and asked the captain, like, yo, what do y'all need? I'll get you a Whirlpool. You need a Whirlpool? That seems to be the role, even if Hilferty isn't the X's and O's. Okay, we need to target this restricted free agent guy, and how does this affect our plan 3 years from now? That's not him. But if he can kind of be the face of the culture at the top, I think he's well suited for that, and I think he's showing that by taking the interest he is, by being able to go like, yeah, man, like the Devils are going to be better next year. Everyone knows this. So what are you going to do? And traveling with the team, making himself known to the players, I do think is a big deal.
I would agree. And I do think you make a good point when you say that the new era of orange is very much, it's new, but it is a lot of like, let's do the old things better. It's basically like they had the opportunity. Comcast had the opportunity, and I personally was like, yeah, I think this might be the move, basically to just say like, break from the past. Let's go out. Let's hire somebody without Flyers connections to run the team, and let's build something new. Comcast could have done that when they got rid of Chuck Fletcher. They could have done that. Instead, they did it. They stuck with the Flyers connections. They made a choice that, like, yes, it's new. It's a new generation, but we think it's very important, both in terms of keeping the old fans happy, but also just because we feel like it's important to keep that bridge to the old. And I do think in a lot of ways, Hilferty, while he says he's never going to be Ed Snyder, that he's never going to be that guy, and of course he's not. But there are some markets where a great owner would be a hands-off, I don't talk to anybody, I just sign the checks, and great. In this market with this team, because of what Snyder did, there seems to be an expectation that guy or woman at the top needs to do more public outreach, because that's what Ed did, and Ed set the standard. And no, you're never going to be Ed. But Hilferty is very purposely, in my mind, trying to not fill the shoes of Ed Snyder, but show that he gets why what Ed did, what Mr. Snyder did, was important to the fans.
That's like, understanding why it's important is like just as important as doing it.
Yeah.
Like, knowing why, being in the locker room and having a relationship with the players and having a relationship with the fans and being front and center like he was today I know it can seem like bullshit. And listen, Ed Snyder, great owner, sort of. You know, like he had his ups and he had his downs. At the end, it did kind of seem he's a little bit more Jerry Jones than we would want.
Fair.
But since he had all that cachet built up, it was like, I don't care. It's Mr. Snyder, man.
Yeah,
like he's
exactly.
the man.
He can do and say whatever he wants.
He still built this thing.
Yeah.
Like he built this thing. There'd be no hockey here without him.
Yeah.
And that was awesome. And like we need to be kind of rooted in that. While, yeah, I would just love a team that goes out and wins and has no connection to anything except going out and winning right now. It is special here. There is just a little, like we've had season ticket holders since 1967 still in the building. For whatever reason, it's very important here, and I think he understands that, and that's kind of led to some of the goodwill, even though, like, they're not that good. You know, they had a good season, and they missed the playoffs. They're drafting 12th. Like, it's not 5th, but it's not 25th either, you know? And I think that goodwill is coming from recognizing the good parts of the regime that we did like.
And if you want to get a little bit more Machiavellian, and I don't think this was the reason, but I do think that it probably played into their thinking as to why they've gone the route they've gone with this, you know, bridge from the past to the present to the future, everything like that. You look at some of the reasons why the Hextall tenure and the Fletcher tenures failed. Hextall probably, and it very well may never have worked, but he really didn't get the chance to play out his entire vision because he burned so many bridges with the old guard, and he gets forced out because he's not being true to what the Flyers are. Then you have the Fletcher era, which again, tons of mistakes made there in terms of team building, but there was a perception during the Fletcher era, even during the good parts, like when they were good in 2019, 2020. There was a perception in sections of the fan base that basically, and a lot of this wasn't even Fletcher, it was kind of Comcast, it was Dave Scott, it was one of the reasons why, like the Snow the Goalie people like hated Valerie Camillo for so long. It was this idea of they are trying to marginalize the past with the theory that when we get real good, it won't matter. Then we will be able to create something new. And I actually think that was the correct belief that, like, if 2019, 2020 would have turned into the next year they're a cup contender, the next year they make to the Final Four, then they're in the cup final, that the place would have been rocking again, regardless of whether they had the logo at center ice the way Ed wanted it and all that stuff. But the thing is that you had to start winning.
Yeah.
And when they didn't start winning, then all of the stuff that they were doing in terms of like not living up to the old Flyers way, then that got thrown in their face because you're not winning and you're also not being true to the identity of the Flyers. You're not being true to Mr. Snyder's legacy. And then the whole thing fell apart because fans just got angry at everything.
Yes.
What this does by doing more than paying lip service, but being actually respectful of all those old things and keeping the alumni happy and keeping the old, you know, making the old season ticket holders feel like it's still kind of like the way it was when they were kids. It means that those people cut the Flyers just a bit more slack than they did to the Chuck Fletcher era, because they already, like, even when the team was winning, it was already like, this doesn't feel like the old Flyers, but like, I'll accept it if we're winning. And then when they started winning, it was like, well, we ain't winning. And also, I don't feel like you're being true to Mr. Snyder. So screw you, blow it up, sell the team Comcast. Doing it this way, I think, does, with a lot of the fan base, buy them a longer leash.
Absolutely.
And I think that was probably part of the calculation, because they knew if they were going to rebuild, it was going to take some time anyway. And they really didn't need a bunch of angry alumni taking shots at them for 5 years while they're trying to rebuild.
They get.
Yeah.
No, and I do think it's the right way to do it, because by marginalizing the past, you are marginalizing the fans in an attempt to, especially in hockey, where there's so few to begin with.
That's true.
Like, you are in pursuit of a fan base that, like, maybe you can create, but it does not yet exist. Like, they were pursuing these fans that, like, I don't know, were they going to go into create a player and make, like, there was no one to market this thing to if you're marginalizing the Like, this is it. These are the Flyers fans. The ones that exist right now are the only Flyers fans, and it seemed as if they were going out and be like, we're going to get these new ones. Like, I'm here. I want you to take my money, and you're like making it so I don't want to give it to you.
Yeah. Well, it goes back to the whole debate. And I mean, I've obviously got in the weeds of this a few years ago with the Bryce Harper stuff, the idea of pandering. And my point has always been, yes, Bryce Harper panders, and that's good. That shows that he cares. Do I think that all of the shit he does and says is 100% sincere? No, I think some of it's calculated, but I appreciate that he cares enough to make that calculation. And it's the same thing with Hilferty. Like, is some of this calculated? Sure. I don't think it's all like, man, he is just this like the greatest dude in history. Yeah, I'm sure some of it is absolutely driven by the belief that this makes us look good.
He's not dumb.
But it shows that he cares enough about the way he looks and about the way the organization looks to do it. And that's important.
I know I'm being pandered to when he brings up our podcast in front of the entire media room, and I love it. Pander to me, baby. Before we go any further, let me tell you about our presenting sponsor. That's right. It's our friends at Mortgage CS, and I got to tell you, man, yes, you know, we all know that rates are slightly higher right now. Thing is, home prices are still rising as well, and Mortgage CS can help you get into a home before they go even higher. And maybe you're already in one. Also refinance to save money when the rates drop. And who doesn't love that? Same house, lower payment. Sign me up for that. We all know about interest rates right now, but the thing is, if you're in the market for a home values are elevated and expected to keep rising as well. So it might not make sense for you to keep waiting for interest rates to drop before you buy a home when the price of houses keeps going up. And Mortgage CS will monitor your refinance opportunities and ensure you save money responsibly when the rates do go ahead and drop. Refinancing with Mortgage CS is straightforward. You don't want to pay a ton of fees when you refinance, and you'll never get that at Mortgage CS. In the end, you'll be so happy you texted Ben. You can see him. You can see his number right there on the screen, and you can find out for yourself the reason. People win more with Mortgage CS. So call or text Ben right now, 267-391-7425 to see for yourself. You can also go to mortgagecs.com/PHLY to check them out or view their 350 plus perfect 5-star reviews. All you got to do, search Mortgage CS. Give it that, plug it in that old Google machine. Those reviews are right there, man. They're all 5 stars. This advertisement is not a commitment to lend or extend credit. Mortgage CS is an equal housing opportunity mortgage broker. All loans are subject to credit approval. Certain restrictions may apply. Company on MLS ID number 1464766. Visit mortgagecs.com for more information. I love days like today when I go back to the outline. I'm like, oh, we've done one thing. Excellent. They didn't say a lot, but I thought there was like stuff you could pluck from it that was definitely interesting.
To be sure.
And one of the most important questions asked by Charlie O'Connor, what is progress? What is progress for the team? And they brought up the idea of this connection with fans. Even if, say you're not on board with 100% of the moves they make, no one ever will be.
Right.
You still, like, they want to change the conversation about the team. Go from irrelevant to talking about, and then talking about negatively to talking about positively. And like now, he said, Dan Hilferty said, people feel better about where we are. People stop him in the street and they acknowledge, yeah, you got a long way to go, but I'm on board. And getting back to everything we just talked about, that's a change.
It is 100% a change. And of course, he's going to position this as positively as possible.
He's not going to be like, oh, we're in the shits.
Yeah, or he's not going to be like, hey, like some guy 2 days ago came up to me and said, you guys should be fucking tanking. Like, and maybe that happens. I don't know.
It probably does.
It probably happens once in a while. He's not going to tell us that in an interview, though. But I do agree that they really are very much focused on changing the perception of the team. I do think this year helped in that regard, both off the ice, but especially on the ice. The team wasn't an abject disaster. You could watch them and enjoy watching them if you weren't paid to do it like we were. They were an enjoyable hockey team to watch for large parts of the season, and that makes it easier for you to buy in as a fan, for you to buy into the idea that, okay, something is changing. It's not just lip service. It's not just, literally painting a new coat of orange on top of everything and calling it something different. It actually is a bit different. But the reason why I kind of zeroed in on this idea of progress is because Hilferty and Jonesy were talking about, we're judging this based on whether we are making consistent progress on a year-over-year basis. And the point I made to Dan Hilferty was, look, that's fair, but what exactly does progress mean? Because if you're purely talking about on-ice results, you guys got to game 82 with a chance to make the playoffs. You missed the playoffs, but you were almost there. Really, the only way for you guys to make meaningful on-ice progress next season would be to make the playoffs. Does that mean that you guys would kind of view, if you guys don't make the playoffs next year, as not making progress? Or are you measuring progress in other ways? And they basically said, we are measuring progress in other ways, which is an interesting answer for two reasons. Number one, it speaks to the fact that they obviously don't want to like hold themselves to making the playoffs. Number two, it also speaks to the fact that like this may not be a super duper aggressive offseason.
They live in reality. They're tempering the expectations. Like, obviously, I mean, we're on the show. I'm talking about going and getting Mitch Marner. Like, they don't want the expectation to be like, oh, yeah, we're going to go get Mitch Marner. Yeah, you know, because they're not.
Exactly.
That's not going to happen.
Or if they do.
Or if they do.
They would rather
awesome, yeah.
They would rather it be under promise, over deliver than over promise, and then they just go out and get like Garnet Hathaway 2.0 in free agency.
There was a reason I used to quote delivery times at Pizza Hut for 40 minutes when our promise time was probably about 25. Because when they show up in 25, people are happy.
You feel good about it.
Yeah, exactly. They're happy about it. No, but what I took from this, and this is when he brought up like the idea of the young player development, Tyson Forster, things like that. But it also did kind of drive home the idea that this might take a little while.
Yeah. Which they've always said. Yeah, they've never shied away from it. I just think that there's a feeling within the fan base. Some people view this positively, some people view this negatively. It really just depends on what your perspective is. But there's a feeling in the fan base that like, yeah, they might say they're rebuilding, but like there's no way they're actually going to be patient for 3-4 years in a row. That they're eventually going to be like, nah, we got to win. Now, the people who think that's a good thing are like, yeah, the Flyers should be trying to win every year. Screw this rebuilding shit. Last year in February, they never should have traded Sean Walker. They should have tried to make the playoffs because once you get in the playoffs, anything can happen. Then there's the other side that's like, I don't believe they are fully committed to this rebuild because they're eventually going to get impatient and give up on it and go trade for Mitch Marner or go sign Steven Stamkos or something like that. So there's two different groups that view that belief differently, but there is a significant portion of the fan base that still doesn't buy that the Flyers will remain patient for long enough to truly see this rebuild through.
And maybe it just kind of lines up with when Michkov was supposed to come over, and they've kind of been planning for that. But the idea of the timeline came out in this conversation, this press conference. And I think this was the most interesting part to me. Jonesy just starts talking about, look at the cap situation.
Yeah.
We have a lot of money dedicated to players who don't play for us. And you look at dead money, Tony D, 1 more year, Kevin Hayes, 2 more year. And I have it just under other albatrosses. Cal Peterson, 1 more year, Ryan Johansson, 1 more year, Cam Atkinson, who the hell knows what's going on there, but he signed for 1 more year. Right. Then you have Risto. I don't know if they're including him in there, but I am. He doesn't play that much either. And then Ryan Ellis, of course, but we he's never coming back.
Yeah, and I think too the fact like this summer, this is basically what I reported in my article yesterday. If there's going to be big moves, it's going to come via hockey trade. Yes. It's not going to come via free agency, and it's not going to come via them trading away first-round picks and top prospects to get vets. Like, it would be a hockey trade where you're moving out, 1 or more of your youngish players to get maybe younger-ish players who maybe fit the timeline better, who maybe you perceive to have higher upside. That's what the big moves will be if they happen. They're not going to be going that other route. And Jonesy especially basically confirmed that today, that our cap situation ain't great, and that's intentional. Yeah. This is not we're in cap hell. This is we spent our cap space over the last year and a half to further the rebuild by sacrificing a little bit of our present flexibility. Now we're in that part where we sacrifice some of our present flexibility, so don't be expecting us to make big eye-catching moves because we put ourselves in a position where we really can't, or it would just be stupid to do that.
And that's where, and I'm going to get to that super chat in just 1 second. And like this part of the conversation, all the stuff leading up to this makes a ton of sense. Yeah, we're not going to be ready to compete until we clean up this cap, we get these guys off, we figure out the contract situations. And also, like unspoken, part of the cap situation is Coots. We don't know if he's going to be anywhere close to worth that contract.
Fair point.
Like, that's a huge deal. Sanheim, we think at least it's not like an albatross, but it's a long-term contract. If you're acknowledging that in the present, with the current cap situation for at least 1 or 2 more years, because the buyouts might extend some of these things, whatever. In what world, given they've acknowledged this realistic timeline, in what world does it make sense to re-sign Travis Konecny? How can you pair these two things? We're going to be figuring out this cap situation, and we're going to be making this slow progress, and it's about Tyson Forster, and it's about Oliver Bonk, obviously Michkov, and then the players we draft in 2024, the draft that hasn't even happened yet. If it's about these guys, in what world does giving a 28-year-old Travis Konecny an 8-year extension make a lick of sense?
They would argue that, again, they think he will age well, that he is important, if not integral, towards fostering the culture that they want to build here. And they would argue that at some point, whether it's a year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, they are going to be looking to add. And if they get rid of Travis Konecny, then they will ultimately be trying to get another Travis Konecny who is probably going to be of similar age to what Travis Konecny will be at that point anyway. So why not just keep the guy you have? Look, we've gone over this Konecny debate quite a lot. I personally lean more towards it makes more sense to trade him because the risk is too high. But from everything I've heard, they're going to take a real long chance at trying to re-sign him. I've heard that Travis Konecny also would like to stay. Usually when both sides want to work out a deal, they find a way to work out a deal. I see where you're coming from, Bill. I'm just saying that they're looking at it that he's going to age well, he fits our team, and if we trade him in 3 years, we're going to be trying to get, whether via free agency or trade, another Travis Konecny, so why not keep the guy we have?
I get it. And I'm not yelling at you because I know you understand it. We've had this conversation plenty of times. And we both come at it from both angles because, like, you got to have a show about something.
Right.
I'm not yelling at you, but you're the person in front of me. And I hear them saying the shit that makes sense. They're making really good points about the cap and the timeline and the players they have here or coming who are going to be rookies, second-year guys in the coming years. If it's about them and it's about this, like, I just don't see how you pair the two and it make any sense. I don't want to be, oh, yeah, well, when TK is 33 years old, we think we're going to be competing for cups. Dope. Like, awesome. Great. So now we're going to be overpaying this guy when we're trying to compete for cups, and we're going to have to go out and find someone to play the position he's currently playing because he won't be playing it at this level then. But again, we've done this a million times. When I heard those two, it just made me think, like, they get it. But do they? Like, it was very much and I have so much more confidence in this regime than I did in Chuck Fletcher. But previous regimes, it was like, we talked about this on Broad Street Hockey all the time. They know there's a salary cap and there's a restriction on how much they're allowed to spend.
Did they?
They get that they can only spend this much.
But they don't really get it.
But they don't understand that means you have to, like, budget.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, we want Rasmus Ristolainen. Let's give him $5 million. All right. You want Rasmus Ristolainen. Cool. That means you can't get someone else. You're paying him money that now you can't allocate elsewhere. Yeah. And I don't think this regime is nearly that, I don't know, stupid. But I hear this and I'm like, that's kind of, and the difference between TK and Risto is the difference between, like, me and Risto. Like, we're talking about various levels of really good players here.
Sure.
But, like, I kind of see it the same. I know you're not, but you're in front of them.
They're betting on, assuming they sign him to a long-term deal, which I guess has not happened yet, even though it seems like they're going down that road. Always the chance that TK's camp is like, nah, we're worth 10-5 a year. give us that or else we'll hit the market. Like, I don't think they would do that. But look, I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm just saying they are viewing this as they know Travis Konecny. They believe in him as a player. They believe in him as a person. They think he's going to age well and he's going to justify this kind of contract because, as we've talked about, it's not like every single guy in his early 30s ages poorly. Some guys age very well. Maybe Konecny will be one of them. They clearly are willing to take the bet, whether they ultimately agree on a deal or not. They are willing to take the bet on Travis Konecny for that long-term of a deal. For me, it would be too risky. But for them, they know Travis. In fairness, they know Travis Konecny, the person, the player, the medicals. They know him better than me, so they are more willing to take that risk. And if they do re-sign him, all you can really do is just hope he ages well.
Oh no, I hope it works. Like, it's gonna happen. I just, I'm pessimistic because I'm a Flyers fan.
Because you're a Flyers fan.
Charlie, it's like you were setting me up for what I was getting to. Okay. I'm talking about taking the bet. They're willing to take the bet. You know who's willing to take your bet? It's the Bet Park Sportsbook app, and baby, it's almost here. Stanley Cup Final starts Saturday, and we got some markets open. That's right. To win the Cup, Florida Panthers, a favorite at -132 to win the series. Edmonton, +112. Underdogs. I'm looking at this Conn Smythe market right now. Connor McDavid leading the way here, +175. He's the favorite to win. Go down the line a little bit. Yeah, Bob's been good. I don't know if he's been great. He's been clutch. I'm looking at Barkov and I'm looking at Tkachuk, both at 5-1. Man, that's tough to pass up. I mean, I'd take +500 on either of those guys. And then Draisaitl. I mean, Draisaitl is a scoring machine.
He is.
All the way down there at +750. All sorts of action. You can get all sorts of Stanley Cup Final action at the Bet Park Sportsbook app. And forget hockey, man. Like, you can bet on everything here. We got baseball every day. Why wouldn't you be betting on the best baseball team in the league right now, our Phils? Why wouldn't you take a little stab at these NBA Finals? It's the Celtics. We got to bet against the Celtics, right? I mean, I guess if Boston's going to win a championship, we should want to profit off of it. But I'd rather just bet against them and win twice. What's better than winning once? Winning twice. Whatever you do, you need to place your bets at the Bet Park Sportsbook app because you can win big with all-day action. If you win your first $10 bet, you can earn $125 in sports bonus bets. You play for fun. You love to win. You bet. Download the app and play along with us. Must be 21 or older. Please gamble responsibly. If you or someone you know has a gambling problem and wants help, call 1-800-GAMBLER.
All right. Well, before we get into the Cutter Gauthier, Jamie Drysdale trade, we do have a super chat from Gary B. I've been waiting for this pod all day and just to hear about Jones and Hilferty conference. Gary, thanks so much for watching. Really appreciate the consistent support because you're basically in here every day. So thanks so much.
Yeah, we really appreciate that, Gary. It makes me want to come in more often, honestly. Now, let's get to the... actually, I want to do Hunter McDonald right now. That's funny to say. I don't remember hearing the names Claude Giroux or James Van Riemsdyk as much as I have heard the Flyers front office promote Hunter McDonald.
They love Hunter McDonald.
Now, he might end up being everything I love in a defenseman. A big, bruising, stay-at-home guy, shot blocker, physical, all that shit. Is there a world in which he's anything other than a third-pair defenseman, though?
I mean, I think that they believe he could be something like a 4-5, where like he could be on a second pair, and be that like penalty kill, the guy you pair with a puck mover and get second pair minutes because he's playing with a really good player. Mm-hmm. I just think that they especially somebody like Jonesy, and I know this because I've had conversations with him about this long before he took the job when we would debate Risto. He just believes that good teams need those kinds of guys. And we've heard the rumors that they might trade Risto. Now, whether that happens this offseason, during the season, next offseason, who knows? The injury that he had this year and the surgery that he had after the season does complicate things a bit there. It does seem like chances are that Risto will not finish out his contract with the Flyers. They will find some sort of way to move on from him. But them moving on from Risto does not mean them moving on from this belief that someone like Risto is needed. And I think they are really excited that they think they just unearthed this diamond in the rough, cheaper Risto guy in Hunter McDonald that can be on the team in a couple years.
And I agree. I think you need those guys too. I just hope we don't make the mistake of giving him $5 million. And that's way down the road. I think you need these guys, and this is a good way to go about getting them. Having them cheap, being what was he, a 6th round pick? Yeah. Great. You do need big, physical, mean assholes in the playoffs. Very much necessary. They are not worth $5 million. And
he'll be on an ELC to start, so he certainly won't be getting paid that to begin with.
If they understand, this is how you acquire those guys, and it's not we're going to give a 1st round and a bunch of other stuff to Buffalo for Rasmus Ristolainen, and then we're going to give him this huge contract extension. If this is the model, yeah, man, we found this dude in the 6th round. Great. I think you need these dudes too. I just do not want to pay out the ass for them the way they have been, whether it's, we need one of those guys, so here's JVR for Luke Shen. Again, I was on board with that trade, but history has shown us it was bad. We just need Nick Grossman. I don't know what to tell you. We just need him.
Need him.
If it's Nick Sealer and Hunter McDonald, great. Yeah. I don't want a whole defense made of these guys. No. I want someone who can
and clearly they don't either, given the fact they traded for Jamie Drysdale.
Yeah. It gives me, I just think it's funny how much they sell us. They named 2 defensive prospects in this thing today. Oliver Bonk, 1st round pick, who is setting the world on fire all the way through the Memorial Cup. And then Hunter McDonald, dude we just found in the 6th round, who's big.
They love
they
Hunter
seem to
McDonald.
really love him. I find that funny. But I hope, cool. I don't know anything about him. Maybe he's great.
Yeah, I mean, my skepticism with Hunter McDonald has always been that even most of the really good defensive defensemen at the NHL level, the guys who at the NHL level are just 20, 25-point guys, but are just studs defensively, and that's their role. Even those guys tended to score more at the junior level, collegiate level, whatever, than Hunter McDonald did at Northeastern. And it just means that, doesn't mean that he can't turn into a legitimately solid NHL defenseman. It just means that he would be an outlier. He'd be a statistical outlier. And generally speaking, I am not in the business of betting on statistical outliers. It's one of the reasons why I'm not super into the idea of signing Travis Konecny to an 8-year contract, because the smart bet is that he won't age super well, or that he will decline at a normal aging curve related decline, and that will make the back half of his contract not that great. It's my same skepticism about Hunter McDonald, but it doesn't mean that he can't turn into a legitimately good NHL defenseman. It's just that the odds are stacked against him a little bit, and he's going to have to overcome the general history of low-scoring collegiate defensemen, and that they usually don't become good NHL players.
All right, let's do the Drysdale-Gauthier trade now. Because the sound clip, if you were to take this out of context, the sound clip of Blessing in Disguise, you could be like, yeah, you think so?
No.
But the way Hilferty framed it wasn't so much even, they like the player. They're excited about the player. They made sure to say they big fans of Jamie Drysdale, think they got good value. Also found it funny they didn't say Cutter's name in the whole situation.
They're not the jilted exes.
Yeah.
And not even a little bit.
But Hilferty used that situation as an example of his own education in the business of the sport, and then getting to see Danny and Jonesy deal with it. And that kind of was one of the things that really gives him optimism. Because one of the first questions, Hilferty opens up and is like, all of you, talking about us, and gave props to Danny and Jonesy and Torts doing their whole thing. And someone asked, all right, well, what did you like about them? And it was later on where he gets to, an actual example. This situation that unfolded makes me think they're good at this. That's what I took away from the Drysdale portion of this press conference.
It was an interesting framing of it, to be sure. And it's a framing that I don't think you have to necessarily agree with, which is why it's interesting, because the thing is Hilferty basically, as you said, positioned it as, I now know that these guys can deal with a tough situation and handle it well. But the jury is still out on whether they handled it well. Now, I think the Flyers handled it extremely well from a PR standpoint. I think they in terms of public relations, in terms of having the fans not blame them but blame Cutter. I think they were exceptional at presenting their preferred message and getting the fan base, who this time last year would have laughed at that kind of framing and been like, no, you guys are just incompetent. You screwed this up, and we hate all of you. Comcast, sell the team. Instead, the fans bought that this really wasn't the Flyers' fault and that the Flyers made the best of a tough situation, and they turned most of their ire on Cutter, if not all of their ire on Cutter. However, I think it's reasonable to not buy into the fact that the Flyers, that Jones and Danny and Torts, that they didn't actually do a great job in extracting value for Cutter, because there was an assumption in Hilferty's answer that they did a good job getting Jamie Drysdale. Now, I am not at all ready to give up on Jamie Drysdale, but it is very possible that in 3 years, when Cutter Gauthier is scoring 40 goals a year on Anaheim and Jamie Drysdale is averaging 30 games a season and not doing well in the games he plays, that you're like, holy crap, they got absolutely killed in that trade. And I think the PR, undeniably, they did a great job. The execution of the trade, I'm not ready to say that they definitely did a great job on that.
There's no way to know that. I will say the one part of it, though, the ability to keep it under wraps was very, very important.
Agreed.
And it was, that showed some,
The execution,
some real skill in that department.
I would agree with that.
And it answered a question. We've said this before. Answered a question from the offseason. Hey, man, how'd you let that Sanheim trade leak? You know, and we have later found out that the leak was from St. Louis. No shit. The guy in St. Louis is the one who said, I ain't getting traded. But, like, we don't know. It's a brand new regime. We have no idea how they handle shit. And, well, oh, man, well, they had this huge blockbuster sorted out, and then all of a sudden, no, not happening. We're covering 50% of Kevin Hayes, and we got, like, I don't know, a 12th round pick or something. Like, we didn't know. And then this goes to show, no, actually, they're good at that part. And if you've listened to 32 Thoughts over the last couple months, it's not Lamorello level, but Elliot Friedman's like, ain't nothing coming out of the Flyers. I can't get shit. And I like that.
Yeah.
I mean, it sucks for you, but as a fan, like pure fan, I'm like, good. I don't want anyone to know anything. I want them to know what their plan is and no one else.
Yeah. No, and when I poke around more like on the league source side, it's the same thing. I get like, yeah, you know, we hear some things about like, you know, they're confident about Michkov, but like, you know, beyond that, it's like, not really a lot of scuttlebutt out there the same way like everyone is gossiping about like Ottawa.
Yes. Like someone in Ottawa's getting traded. Like that is a certainty. I don't know if it's Shane Pinto, Brady Tkachuk, Jacob Chikrin. I don't know who. Someone in Ottawa is getting traded. That's without a doubt.
I just think that in this scenario, I think undeniably you can look at how they handled the Gauthier situation. You could say they did a really good job of keeping under wraps, of leveraging Jonesy's personal relationships to have it so no one betrayed them in negotiations, that they did a good job with PR and handling the fans, which they, you know, 2-3 years ago, they were freaking terrible at. They've gotten a lot better. But I don't think you can yet say that the front office pro scouting department or the amateur scouting department, if they were looking at prospects, that they definitely executed on this trade as well as they could possibly have executed, because we know that there were other players offered. Like one name that has come up is Marco Rossi. If Marco Rossi in 4 years is a legit 1C and Drysdale is just a dude, then you're going to be like, well, shit, maybe the pro scouting department needs to get an overhaul because they really blew this one. I'm not saying they definitely did. I'm just saying that Hilferty's answer
assumed it was a great trade.
Assumed it was a great trade, or at least the best they could have done, and I'm not ready to say that yet.
Yeah. No, and it's just something we can't know yet. The player evaluation part of it is the most important part, and it's just something we can't know yet.
Right.
But one thing you can say, though, man, that whole situation, it was pretty shady. It was shady. Tell you what's a good kind of shady, though, man. It's our friends at Shady Rays. You got to get ready for the season ahead with quality shades built to last. And our friends at Shady Rays have you covered with premium polarized shades that won't break the bank. Shady Rays is an independent sunglasses company offering a world-class product rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. Their shades have durable frames and crystal clear optics, making them the perfect choice for all outdoor adventures. They have hundreds of options to choose from, so you're bound to find the perfect pair to match your style. I got the pair I love right now. I got a pair of aviators and I got a pair of tangle-free crossover aviators. Very cool, very durable. I'm a big fan of them. I think you'll like them too. I wear Shady Rays every day, honestly. I wear sunglasses basically every time I leave the house, even if there's no sun. I just kind of like to wear sunglasses. Shady Rays has become my choice brand of shades. And listen, man, not only are they cool as hell, come with a great guarantee. You can get the shades if they ever go missing. If your shades ever go missing or take an unexpected hit, don't sweat it. They have the most insane protection in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by lost or broken replacements. If you don't love your shades, you can exchange for a new pair or return worry-free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop. Their team always has your back with personal and fast support. And exclusively for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Head to shadyrays.com and use code PHLY for 35% off polarized sunglasses. That is a serious discount. 35% off with promo code PHLY. So try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 300,000 people. I forget what the joke I wanted to make on my way out. Oh, no, it was just, we don't have to worry about Jamie Drysdale getting injured anymore, Charlie, because Hunter McDonald's going to protect him.
Oh, right. That's how it works.
That's how it works.
Yeah, yeah. And again, the point I'm making about Drysdale, because there's someone in our chat came up with, like, I think they should have gotten more value back for Gauthier. I think the value was fine. Like, I don't think
5th, 1st, 6th.
No, like Jamie Drysdale is a very highly valued asset around the NHL. Like, he is a really good skating, right-handed shooting defenseman who was taken in the top 10 of a relatively recent draft who's under 25. Those guys don't get traded very often. They don't. That was a valuable get. Now, would they have gotten more value if Cutter Gauthier, wasn't telling the Flyers, I'm not going to sign with you? Probably, but he did, so they were kind of stuck, and they got back legitimately good value. However, just because a player is valuable doesn't mean he ultimately is going to prove to be good. And this is where you trust your scouts, where it's like, okay, what do you think of Jamie Drysdale, the player? What do you think he will become? They are betting on his upside. They are betting that he can, at the very least, be a really good top 4 defenseman, and at best, be a legitimate top pair defenseman, a true impact guy. If in 4 years he is that, we are saying, man, the Flyers scouting department and, Danny and Jonesy and everybody, they know what they're doing when it comes to player evaluation. They can look at a guy and see what he will become, not what he is. If in 4 years Jamie Drysdale is a nobody, if he's just a third pair defensive liability kind of guy, and they could have gotten someone who might have equal value to Drysdale now, but proves to be a better player long-term, I don't think it's a failure of value extraction, but it might be a failure of player evaluation.
Evaluation, scouting, whatever you want to call it, that's what this is ultimately going to come down to. They think they got their guy.
Yes.
We'll see.
We'll see.
We'll see. Charlie, it is now time for what was the most important part of this press conference. By leaps and bounds. My biggest takeaway, we might have another Burnergate situation on our hands. Now, hear me out. Charlie's first question, Dan Hilferty just interrupts him and asks what the F in F Around Friday stands for. And I very much appreciated you going, that's a Bill Matz.
That's a Bill Matz.
I loved it. Now, on its own, that could seem like, just another thing that the CEO does. Like I said, he's good at this shit.
Yeah.
Like,
it was him trying to pander a little bit.
I don't know if he listens to the show or not, but I feel great that I think he did. Like I'm going to tell people that Dan Hilferty listens to my show. It makes him look connected. He's very good at that. But when you combine it with some tweets we received the other day.
These were really funny.
Charlie and I both received tweets from a guy named Mike W. Steelers, which is a burner-sounding name if I ever heard it. When you combined it with He's talking about our use of the F word. Now, Mike W. Steelers is talking about our use of the F word. Charlie, could we have another Eric Jr. situation on our hands here? Do you think Dan Hilferty is spending his free time trolling us on Twitter?
I mean, this was a wild set of tweets because I really don't curse that much. You curse more than me.
I was offended by these tweets. I'm trying to curse. And first of all, he's talking about your language and not mine.
I
It's
know.
Like, I don't know
so
how you
weird.
mix the two of us up. That's insane. I now suddenly feel know what like Steph and Kelly said all those years. Like, there's one woman on the show.
Right,
Like, no,
yep.
there's two. No, there's just the girl on the show.
Unbelievable.
But I don't think our voices sound all that similar. That part blew my mind. Part two, fuck, shit. Those are bad curse words. Like, those are top tier.
Yeah. Those are ones you would get, like, you know, you would get sent to your room if you said as a child.
That and the one that now Pat McAfee has made famous. Probably the top three, like, non-slur curse words. You know? Suck was included in this.
Yeah, that's
Suck is not a bad word.
No, that's like, it's like one of those, I think if I remember from my childhood days, it was definitely one of the words where my mom would yell at me for saying, like, you shouldn't say that, but it wasn't a word that I was actually going to be punished for saying.
I remember it was the 97 playoffs, the year before the Phantoms won. Amazing line brawl with the Bears in the second round. Whole stadium's chanting, Hershey sucks. And I'm like telling a group of friends about this. My mom's like, Bill. I'm like, that was it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, Bill.
It's on that
Like,
next tier down.
20,000 people were yelling at Mom.
I've heard it by a lot of people.
Also, I grew up in this house. Like, come on.
There you go. But one thing I also loved about that, about those sets of tweets, like, this is Mike W. Steelers, and he's referring to himself as we.
We.
Like, who is he speaking on behalf of?
The Steelers Nation? I can't imagine. Now, listen, we have our rivalry with Pittsburgh. The Penguins, notably. Like, the Pirates are barely a team. And I have always had, like, I don't know, a jealousy of the Steelers because they're, like, what we want to be. Like, longtime owner, historical franchise, all the championships. They're all about linebackers and, like, you know, that style of football.
Sure.
You know, I've always kind of liked the Steelers in that regard. Like, I'd root against them. But, I don't know, like, I assume their fans are a lot like ours.
This one was great. We are not going to talk about your colleague, Bill Matz, Mr. Matz. We are done trying to reason with him. First off, again, what's with the we? That will be dealt with appropriately.
Yeah,
like,
they're going to reach out to the higher ups.
Maybe it is Dan Hilferty because it's so weird.
It's so strange and like polite and weird. I don't know. It just very much reminded me of my interactions with Eric Jr.
And then didn't he block you immediately?
He said, can you ask Charlie to like clean it up or something? And I said, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
He said, why not? And I said, I don't want to. And then he blocked me after he said, this is no lie. It was a whole exchange. But it just reminded me. I am saying this jokingly. I do not believe CEO of Comcast Spectacor, Dan Hilferty, is spending his free time trolling us. That would be fucking hilarious. Honestly, it would be hilarious if he was.
I mean, there is precedent in their very arena.
We've seen it happen in that building before. I interacted with Eric Jr. I was part of the whole burner gate, and I don't know, this whole thing kind of just reminded me of that. Before we get out of here, Charlie, just one thing I wanted to get to quickly. This idea of culture that we've kind of like, it's nebulous. Like I think sometimes maybe we underrate it because it's hard to justify a decision on something that can't be quantified. Like, yeah, leadership. Leadership is good. No one's saying leadership is bad. But tell me what a good leader is, and you can't. You know, so it's like, well, how can you make decisions based on that then? But I was thinking about this idea that's driving a lot of people nuts, including me, the idea of bringing back Eric Johnson. Because to me, it's like, yo, if we need a seventh defenseman who's like not that good and doesn't play too much, why can't it be Louis Belpedio or Victor Mete or some other dude that you forgot was in the league 3 years ago?
Well, as we mentioned yesterday, the reason is because if you don't have a first or second overall pick, you can't win a cup. But so you got to have it.
Then I came to this tweet. It was from Dropping the Gloves. That's John Scott's podcast.
Oh, yeah.
And it was Bouchard from the Oilers talking about what he learned during that brief tenure of Duncan Keith with the Oilers.
Right.
And what it takes to win and what it takes to be in the playoffs. And I look at Erik Johnson. He is obviously not Duncan Keith. Duncan Keith was awesome for a time. But at that point, he's more of a mentor for the Oilers.
Yeah, he was way past
And I
his
look
prime.
at Erik Johnson, former first overall pick, toiled away on some lean years in St. Louis and Colorado, eventually wins the Cup with the Avs a couple of years ago, 55 career playoff games. The dude has done it all. Like, he's got plenty of experiences that he can draw on. Do we maybe underrate the value that brings because we're like, yeah, he's not that good?
I've never had a problem with them re-signing Erik Johnson being the number 7.
Oh, do I?
Because my viewpoint is that I don't want a prospect being the 7. I want the prospect playing. And if Erik Johnson, the fact that they deployed Mark Stahl the way they did last year gives me confidence that that John Tortorella in particular can have a veteran number 7 that he doesn't overuse. I wasn't sure if he could do that. Last year, he showed me he could. So now it's like, fine. If you want Erik Johnson to be the good guy number 7, that is perfectly fine by me. And I absolutely believe that, from what I've heard from, guys like Cam York and guys like Travis Sanheim, they really benefited from Mark Stahl being around last year, just in terms of being able to pick his brain at certain times of the year when maybe they were going through some struggles or, when they were preparing to take on a bigger workload, things like that. Erik Johnson could certainly play that role, and I think it's important. It's just, I don't think, Erik Johnson is the perfect guy to play that role because he's going to cost about, probably somewhere between $900,000 and $1 million on a 1-year contract. That's fine for leadership. I don't want you to be spending an insane amount of your cap space just because of leadership. That's where you get into a problem. But if you're going to fill out your roster with leaders, with guys who are good for culture, and they're not going to take up that much cap space, I think that is completely justifiable and valuable.
I believe it is, and the way you're framing it, it's going to be a 1-year, $1 million deal. It ain't killing nobody. Have them around. But I just look at this sort of thing, and I know I'm going against my point here because I brought it up. I just look at this, and it's what I said about Andrew McDonald. All right, man, if all the shit he does that's not playing hockey is this important, he should be the fucking coach.
Yeah, and I've brought that up at times.
Teammates and coaches are different.
Players will always say that it's different when he's your teammate, even if he's not playing every night, if he's going through the practices, he's blocking shots when he plays, he's part of the team. It's just different than being like a skills coach. It just is.
I get it. It's just something I want to bring up and present because maybe I have underrated those things, especially as it pertains to the retention of Erik Johnson, dude who I didn't even know was still in the league when they acquired him. Anyway, and this is former first overall pick, Stanley Cup champion. He's had a hell of a career.
Real good career.
I'm just I don't want to watch him play. But hopefully we don't have to that
my
much.
thing, and I still think that, trading for Erik Johnson was kind of dumb because I would have rather them given a longer look to a Ronnie Attard or an Adam Jinnick or something like that. And given the results that Erik Johnson provided, and underlying numbers-wise, Erik Johnson actually performed pretty well at 5-on-5.
Right, yeah.
The problem was that if you looked at the goals against numbers, Flyers got butchered when Johnson was on the ice from a goals against standpoint. So I don't think that in terms of actual results, because as much as I talk about shot differential and chance differential, what actually matters is goal differential in terms of wins. And I don't think Attard or Jinnick would have been any worse than what Johnson produced from an on-ice goal differential standpoint. So I wouldn't have traded for him then, but I don't have a problem with them re-signing him because I think they're going to need a 7, and you might as well get a good veteran dude who can help your kids.
Fair enough. I just to stick up for Erik Johnson, and then we got to get out of here. I don't know how many guys could have had good on-ice goal differential with the goaltending they were getting at the end of the year.
Reasonable.
That's
reasonable.
And maybe it was worse with him. I haven't seen the relative numbers. I know you have, but I don't know, man. The goalies fucking sucked at the end of the season. There's no two ways around that.
Good point.
I got 2 of them in there. I got 2 of the 3 right in there in that last sentence for you, Mike W. Steelers. All right, before we bid you adieu, I got to tell you about what's going on this weekend. Now, my vacation, it starts like as soon as I'm done this read.
Right.
But maybe you're not going to London for the Phillies-Mets series. What should you do? You should head out to Gall & Company in Port Richmond for our watch parties on Saturday the 8th and Sunday the 9th. It is going to be a great time. Ticket giveaways, meet Renee, meet Jamie, the whole crew. It's going to be freaking awesome. I can't say enough about what we do for our events. They're always a ton of fun. They over-deliver, as we talked about earlier. You're going to have a great time. Go to allphly.com. Check out our events calendar. Make sure you RSVP and come on out, especially to that Sunday one, man. 9 a.m., have some kegs and eggs going. I think that'll be a great time. Come on out, meet the whole PHLY Phillies crew. I'll be in London, but the rest of you, you should be at Gall & Company. And that is all the time we have for you on PHLY Flyers today. Thank you all for listening. Thank you for hanging out. If you haven't already, you got to hit that subscribe button. Search. I almost did the search Broad Street Hockey thing again. Can't get it out of my head. Right here, YouTube, search PHLY Flyers, podcasts at PHLY_Flyers on Twitter. That's it. My name's Bill Matz. That's Charlie O'Connor. Stay loose and sexy, Philly.
We all silly like the mayor.